Afternoon, this is Sandy Hartnett and Kathy Lundeen. We're doing a buzz killer video today at the Pepperell Gazebo with Deb Busser. She's the Democratic candidate for the 1st Middlesex District to the State House in Boston. Correct?
Correct, yes.
Deb is from Groton, Mass. And do you want to take it from there and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So I do live in Groton now, but I actually grew up in Townsend, and I raised my family in Dunstable. So I have lived in 3 of the 6 towns, and very much feel like this is my home, and and this is I really care about representing us and making sure we have some strong advocacy in the state.
What do you see as the main problem in the state today that maybe Sheila Harrington isn't dealing with, or what drives you to run?
Yeah. Well, so first of all, if you had asked me, I don't know, probably a few years ago, whether or not this was something that I was considering, I would have told you no. It was not part of my long-term plan by any stretch. But I will say that I've been paying attention to this seat for a long time. I actually worked on the committee for the person who ran in 2010, so I've been sort of keeping my eye on it. And twice our current representative has been unopposed. So when I went in 2018 and I pulled the Democratic ballot and I didn't have anybody to vote for again, that's when I think the light bulb went off and I started to think about, is this really something that I could do? And I remember coming out actually and talking to somebody who was holding signs and sort of saying, hey, I think I'm interested in this. And she said, oh, you should have told us, we would have written you in. And I was like, no, if I'm going to run, I'm going to need 2 years to make sure that I can be a good candidate, and I know what it takes to run a successful campaign. If people are going to be spending their time and money on me, I want to make sure they have a good shot of winning. And I also wanted to make sure that I understood what it was going to take to do the job. And so that was council on aging directors, police chiefs, fire chiefs, activists, to make sure that I really understood, what was needed in the community, and that I was going to have the relationships I needed in order to do the job well. So that's the preamble. I can say more if you want. That's good.
So we all know this COVID situation that we're under. It's impacted a lot of aspects of our life.
Yeah.
So we'll go through a couple of them maybe. Like education, obviously. Education is homeschooling. How do you feel about public education versus school choice?
Yeah. So I am a product of the public schools. So I went to the Middlesex and Groton Dunstable schools. I feel really fortunate that I went through those school systems, and then I was a first-generation college student in Oslo, first person in my family to go to college, and I later went back for a master's degree. So I think investing in public education, I think, is critical and crucial. And what I hear about a lot when I'm in the district is the lack of funding for some of our mandates, right? So the 3 of the 6 towns in this district, there are 3 regional school systems, and we all have the same issue around getting appropriate reimbursement for funding. We were promised something with regionalization that we're not getting. The buses go by with 3 kids on the bus. That's just crazy and wasteful, and it really puts our communities in a difficult place. So I'm all in favor of investing in education. I'm very concerned about the cost of our public universities and community colleges. They've gone up dramatically since I attended. I don't know that I would have been able to attend if they were at the level that they are right now. We keep pushing more into the students. The debt for the students keeps going higher and higher. They're paying some of the worst interest rates. So I think we really have to be taking care of the folks in our communities who want to pursue higher education and making sure it's accessible so that everybody has the same opportunities that I did.
Okay. So do you think kids should have the choice to go somewhere else if they want public education? High school, grade school.
Yeah. So when you say choice, I guess let me make sure I understand your question.
Right. They want to go to another town. They want to go to another school.
Yeah.
The town money should go and follow the child where it wants to go.
Yes. For right now, I don't think that's a great answer. I think it's difficult for our school systems to plan, but I think it's our best answer right now.
So you'd say you're for school choice.
I'm for public school choice. Yeah.
So if a kid wanted to go to a private school, you wouldn't suggest public funds going there?
I would not, no.
So you're probably not for supporting religious schools that's come about too?
I don't think public money should be used for religious schools, no. I absolutely don't. I think, I've heard a lot about charter schools, and I know that there's some good charter schools in our area. Again, I get concerned about expanding those and taking away from our public schools, but I don't have any issue with the ones that exist. And I know that for some folks they really have been, and some students they really have been, a lifesaver. So.
Okay.
So with COVID and more homeschooling and remote learning, do you think any of those public funds should make their way to the homes?
I think We don't know the answer to that yet, is what I think.
Yeah.
I think it's something
Yeah.
to consider. I think we just don't know the answer to that yet. I do hear a lot about from educators, from parents, from students, right? Like, we're all figuring this out, and it is a less than ideal situation all the way around.
Right.
One of the things that really concerns me, so in my work, I'm an executive coach. I work with women in leadership all the time. I'm really concerned about how far this is going to set women back in the workforce, because they are disproportionately bearing the brunt of additional home care responsibilities, of educating their children. And I actually know folks who have stepped back, stepped away, who were really high potential women. So I'm particularly concerned about it. That's just women's leadership is something that's really important to me. I'm really concerned about how that's going to impact women going forward.
Okay, good. So do you have any ideas of how college costs, state college costs, could be reduced?
Yeah. Well, I think we need to allocate more into the budget. I mean, number one, we just have to
It just keeps
prioritize
increasing.
that. The tuition keeps going up.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at the costs of the administration, they're not keeping pace at the same rate.
Yeah.
And I think that's a real problem. It's a public university. The design and the intention is for that to be available for everybody who wants to be able to go to college in an affordable way. And I think we have to work on that. It's important.
So we're talking about families in school, the Family Leave Act, that's supposed to start in 2021, paying people who need to stay home.
Yes.
Do you think there's enough money in the budget? Will that be able to happen? Have you analyzed that?
You know, I'll be honest with you, I have not looked at that from a fiscal standpoint.
Okay.
I do think I think that a lot of private companies have had that for a long time, FMLA, and I think it's important, and I think there's going to be a time when we need it at some point, and I think I think making sure that there are some protections for employees around if they, face a real family crisis, I think that's important.
Okay, I don't have any more about school.
No, I
Do you?
think that's good.
Okay, so our next thing were safe communities.
Yeah.
There's an initiative at the state level to make Massachusetts safe communities.
Safe Community Act,
Yep.
keeping ICE out of any kind of community crime situation.
Yeah.
Would you support that if it would probably be in the legislature when
Yeah.
either you or
Yep. So
in there.
I think the answer is probably. I mean, you have to see how it comes out of committee. Like, it's easy to say you're going to support something, and then the Senate does something to it, and the House
Right.
does something to it, and it comes out and it looks a little bit differently. What I will say is that I don't think it's a good use of the resources of our small communities to be doing the work of the federal government. Like, we do not have the resources. We do not have we just don't have the bandwidth to do that. So that's, I think, where I really come down on. I just don't think that's our work to do, and I don't think we can afford it.
That's true. So leading into that too is the other thing. Sanctuary status for Massachusetts, making it a sanctuary state.
Yeah.
would you support that or not?
Yeah, so I haven't seen, I would have to know what that looks like.
Okay.
Again, my concern
Well, it
would
has
be,
to do with the whole ICE thing and sanctuary city.
right. Yeah, no, I understand what it means, but I don't
Yeah.
understand what the implications are in terms of what that would mean for us financially, fiscally. So I think that's what I would need to understand. My concern is adding any more cost to our state to do the federal government's work.
Right. Okay.
And there's also bills for defunding the police. Where's your stance on that? That are coming up.
I haven't
there's
seen, I guess you're gonna have to
right?
tell me, I haven't seen the bills on defunding.
Well, there's
They were
supposedly
coming
a
up.
5-to-1 thing on Beacon Hill in Boston in the legislature to defund the police, redirect funds away from police into other things. Do you agree with that?
I don't think that's the bill, so it's hard for me to answer
No,
that
it's
question.
a general thinking.
I think there's some
Yeah.
specific policy in Boston that's being proposed, but
Yeah.
I don't believe that there's nothing at a state level that's being proposed about defunding the police.
But would you agree with it if something does come up or not?
So again, a little hard to answer because I don't think that's a piece of legislation.
No,
I
but
think
it's
each
a general
community
thing going
needs-
on in the country.
Yep. I think each community needs to decide how they want to invest their resources.
I have a question though. What about if a bill came before the state to cut state police?
Yeah.
Where would you stand?
Yeah. I think I would have to see what's going on there. I mean, again, I appreciate our law enforcement, but
Yeah.
let's also be clear that there have been a lot of problems with the state police recently, around overtime pay, around a whole bunch of other things. So if there's waste to be cut in the state police, like yeah, but I would have to see the specifics of that. I'd have to hear the testimony in order to answer that question.
So, would you be more in favor of social workers going to some of these calls, or
Yeah.
what would be your vision?
Yeah.
Because I think you might be faced with it somewhere along
Yeah,
the way.
no, I
think so,
agree.
yeah.
And I think, yeah, so I'm certainly not a law enforcement
Right.
professional, but I think the idea of exploring how social workers could partner
Mhm.
in some situations makes a lot of sense.
Mhm.
I think, again, I think for me, the way I would make decisions is really to listen to the testimony of experts, right? I'm a generalist, I'm not an expert in every area, and I think what you need to do is be having as many conversations as you can with the people who are living that experience day to day on the ground in order to make an informed decision. Do I think there's some possibility to bring those folks in? Yeah.
And there's not enough mental health institutes, mental health
Workers,
nothing.
exactly. I mean, I think we're really coming up to something that's going to be a real crisis.
Well, that leads into health. My next question.
Healthcare.
So the percent of the budget, general budget that our health costs take up, is that sustainable? And do you have a plan to cost containment, different ways medicine and health can work, reimbursements? Do you think, the amount that we pay into health is?
What percent of the budget is the healthcare bill part of it?
I couldn't tell you the percentage off the top of my head. I really couldn't.
It's a lot.
It's high. Yeah, absolutely.
Very high.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think there's certainly some opportunities for improvement. One of the things I hear a lot about is the cost of prescription drugs. And I really literally have had conversations with people who live in this district who tell me they're having, trouble deciding whether to pay for medication or for groceries, right? Like that is outrageous and should not be happening. And I think there are things that the state can do for people to access services via telehealth, right? And I think that is a real opportunity for some cost saving as well as access, because again, people are isolated. There are folks who really are missing their support systems, and I think the more that we can, I hope that we see a lot more. I hope we see an expansion of that. I think that helps us in a number of ways.
So let's continue on with health.
Okay.
Vaccines.
Yeah.
Where are you standing with mandated vaccines? Or do you think this COVID is a health issue, public health, or more a civil rights issue? Where do you fall on mandates and free choice?
Yeah. So I'm assuming you're talking about the governor asking for mandatory flu shots. Is that what you're referring to? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. May as well be specific. I think in that case, so first of all, I think it's concerning. In general, I think medical decisions should be made between physicians and their patients. I think the more that we can have government out of those decisions, the better. I really think that's not where we want to. I just don't think that's a road that we want to go down in a long-term way. That said, we are in sort of this unprecedented global pandemic, and I do think we may have to do some things that we may not normally do. And so at this point, I think I would I'm not a public health expert, and again back to my earlier comment, I think from what I understand from the public health experts, and I think the governor feels the same, that's what we might need to do at this juncture. Do I think that's a good long-term solution? No. I mean, again, I think in general, I'd like people to be able to make those decisions with their physician.
Whether to get a vaccine or not.
Yeah, absolutely. Pretty much all healthcare decisions.
questions.
Pretty much all healthcare decisions.
Do you have anything on health?
I think that covers everything.
Well, we'll tie your green initiatives into health, making a town green. So there's a lot of talk about green. Green is healthy, blah, blah, blah. So do you have a plan or any idea how towns might make money off green energy? Like how to get a town to be green with some sort of incentive, whether it's state incentive or working
not
with
all the burden on the
businesses.
taxpayer to
Yeah. Well, I do think we need to be incentivizing clean energy and electric vehicles and things to reduce emissions. I think there's an opportunity to do that, and I think there's an opportunity to do that in a way that's cost effective.
Okay, good.
All right,
Sounds good.
Frank voting? Do you have anything else on health?
No, I think that's good. Yeah.
Okay, we'll go on to rank voting.
Yeah.
That the first one, right to repair. I think if you have anything to say about that, feel free. But the one that we're kind of focused on is the rank ballot.
Yeah.
Rank voting.
Rank voting.
Rank choice voting on the ballot. Yeah.
Are you support of that?
I am in support of that. Yeah. And I think for me, I just
Can you explain it? That's,
Yeah.
Because I'm only
yeah.
because you know, I think if you give an
I think it is
explanation
confusing
of
to
what it
people.
is.
Yeah, I agree
Yeah.
that it's confusing to people, and I've sat through several different presentations
Yeah.
to make sure that I
Yeah.
can understand it. But what it means is, I think what the intention is to make sure that whoever gets into office, there is a majority of votes. So what we saw with the 3rd Congressional, right, in 2018, we had 10 Democratic candidates. We also have a very late primary relative to other states. So we had 10 candidates who were, you know, fighting it out and raising money and taking a lot of resources. When ultimately, you know, the person who won, Lori Trahan, you know, won by 150 votes or something like that after the recount, you know. So say 20-ish% of the vote. Like that's not a great, I think that's not a great way to sort of start office. You really want to have more support and to know that the folks who you're representing want you to be in office. So in that particular case, what would have happened if people had put in their first, second, and third choice? Once, what happens is people, if you don't get a certain amount, you actually drop off. And so the second choice comes up and gets added to it. So what you're getting to is you're getting most people's first or second choice as opposed to the whole spoiler of, you know, effect that you may get if you have 4 great candidates, 3 of them are really similar, and they split the vote, and then the 4th person gets in. That's what it's really designed to.
It does change the way we vote completely though. We
It does.
vote and the person may win by 1 vote, but they still win.
Yep.
We don't vote by majority.
Right. Yeah, it does change the way we vote. But I think ultimately the intention is for people to feel like they have a voice. And that they're, you know, if their first choice didn't get in at least out of 10, at least their second choice got in out of 10.
But that requires the voter to understand each candidate and to research to really be.
I'm hoping people are doing that if they're voting.
I know.
I'm hoping people are doing it. And and again, I don't want to downplay the fact that it takes some education, and I think there is. I'm not saying it's an easy thing to just implement overnight, but I absolutely think, you know,
And then
I
at
think
some
we can
point-
get there. Canberra, there are a lot of places who do use ranked choice
Right.
voting. Maine has gone to ranked choice
Yeah.
voting.
Tuesday,
I think
Maine, Idaho or
I think we're
something.
smart as the people in Maine. I think we can do it.
But at some point it does go to a computer if there's too many candidates or something, or a
So-
computer comes
Yeah.
into play to figure
But I
out
need to
who's-
know what you see the pro as, other than people feeling as though they have a voice. Because voting for me, I think I have a voice.
Yeah.
I'm
Because you're
pretty
voting.
not on the fence. I investigate who I want, so I can vote for one.
Yeah.
So what are the other pros with that?
I think the pro is that that whoever wins is the top choice, or is like a greater choice of more people. That's what I would say.
So
but the
it could
greater
also
choice
be
of
the
more
lesser
people is the
person,
person.
too.
The greater choice of most people is the person who has the most votes, isn't
Right.
it? No.
Yeah.
Again, it goes back to sort of, you know, splitting. It goes back to the whole spoiler effect. You can't say somebody. It's hard to say you have a mandate if you only get 20% of the vote, right? Like that means 80% of the people didn't vote for you. Yeah. So that's
the
where
way we vote. We vote. The person with the most votes.
I understand.
Yeah,
how people-
I just
think
see it
I think
as-
there's a way where people can feel like they have more of a say, and that they'll turn out and be engaged in the process. And I think that's
So-
the other thing. That's the other purpose, is to have people engaged.
So why are the people who are behind that, like there's a billionaire family from Texas, the Soros family is backing it. Why? If it's like a chance to give people more voice, why are billionaires backing it?
I couldn't tell you. I don't know who those folks are.
Do you
Well,
see any cons with it? That would be a con.
That's a con.
I
There's
think-
billionaire people.
For
pushing
some
it.
people,
So I'll
that
take
would
your
be
word for it. I
fine.
haven't looked into who's funding it. I mean,
Well,
I've sat
It's on the,
several
yeah, it's on
presentations.
the
It makes sense
information
to me.
section of
Do-
it.
Do you see any other cons?
I think the only con is, to your point, is making sure people understand, you know, how to do it and what it is. That's what I would say.
Yeah, I just think it's a completely new way to.
It is. It's a new way to us. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Could you just explain why that makes the better person win?
I don't think it can. I
Yeah.
think it's just a difference. I'm not sure we're going to get to the same place on that.
No.
but,
Right, probably not,
yeah.
but I just wanted to know, like, how do you come to that conclusion?
Yeah. I think I tried to
Because the
answer that.
person I voted,
No.
my
It's
number 3
interesting.
person
Yeah.
moves on up and he wins. That's how it works.
Potentially, depend if they don't get a majority of the vote. That's right.
Right.
Yeah.
But so now we're not voting based on the number of votes, we're voting on a majority. Someone has to get 50%.
You're voting your first choice, your second choice, and your third
to
choice.
get someone to 50%.
You're voting your first choice and your second choice and your third choice.
To get someone to 50%.
Right.
Whereas we've always elected people based on the number of
Yeah,
votes.
I understand.
Who gets the most votes.
Yeah.
I just think it's a big change, and
I agree. It's a big
I
change.
don't know. I don't know if I agree with it yet. I think I'm voting no. But I hope people investigate it and,
We're here for
and
Debbie.
understand it. I know, but I'm just saying, I think
her
that's a big question. I'm just saying, I hope people
Actually,
investigate
let's
it.
also be clear, the legislature is not voting on that. You all are voting on that.
Exactly.
That's not my say. I'm
Exactly.
giving you my
No, but you're
opinion.
voting as a person.
I'm giving you my opinion as a voter.
Voter,
It's not
right.
something that the legislature is taking.
But it will affect
It
the
actually is
legislature.
something that
It
the
will affect
voters
the
have said that they
legislature.
want on the ballot. So it's only on the ballot because enough voters say they want it on the ballot.
And billionaires too.
We voted to have it on the ballot.
Yeah.
Okay, what's next?
How about, who are some of the people endorsing your organizations?
Yeah. So I feel really proud about our endorsements. Our first endorsement was from the Environmental League of Massachusetts. I've been endorsed by the Sierra Club. I've been endorsed by Mass Women's Political Caucus, Bay State Stonewall Democrats, Planned Parenthood, NARAL. I don't know, I might be forgetting somebody else. Congresswoman Lori Trahan, which I'm really proud about. So yeah, I think we worked hard on those. Those are not necessarily easy endorsements to get. Some of them, they're term papers worth of policy things and really getting down to the nitty-gritty. But I feel really good about those organizations, and I think those are the folks that when I get to the State House, those are some of the policy experts that you want to have relationships with, so that you can actually
They're also
propose
lobbyists,
meaningful legislation.
Would you call them lobbyists too, though? That are do they come under the
They're not.
umbrella?
I mean, I think they're a different lobbyist.
Yeah, but pushing their agenda.
They're nonprofit organizations who,
Yeah.
the Sierra Club certainly in the Environmental League of Massachusetts, their agenda is environmental. Sure.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So
Well,
what would you
wait
say?
a minute.
Okay,
Now,
go
if
ahead.
I'm watching this, my question would be,
Yeah.
so having those groups endorse you, whether they're nonprofit or wherever, do you feel pressure to pursue their agenda?
I feel pressure to pursue the agenda of the people of the First Middlesex. And I think it's great to have experts in a lot of different policy areas where I can get some information.
So that's what you're using them for?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
And what do you feel is the difference between you as a Democrat and a Republican? What's your Democratic philosophy?
Are you saying
what
the
is-
Democrat, or are you talking about the specific race?
Of
I guess
you.
help me understand.
Of you, what is your Democratic? Why are you a Democrat?
Why am I a Democrat? I think because I want the system to work for everybody. I believe that it should work for everybody, and I believe that we have a capability for it to work for everybody. Social justice is important to me. Economic justice is important to me, and I think those are reasons primarily. Yeah. I mean, I haven't been I've been unenrolled for a period of time, but I seem to notice that I kept voting Democrat, and I think that comes from a values place for me. And
So what would be your number one initiative? Like most people focus, on a few things that they really want to see change.
yeah.
So there's a bunch of committees. What are you what are you targeting to get on?
Well, I can talk to you about a few different committees that I would like to be on, but I would say if we're talking about legislative priorities, my biggest priority is fighting for funding for our communities. So it's very clear to me, and I wasn't 100% sure when I started running for this office, but the more research I've done, the more conversations I've had, and really watching the legislation and the bills that are coming out of Beacon Hill, we are not getting the funding that we deserve. And there are several bills that have come up over the last this session where there have been opportunities for funding around transportation, there's been funding for COVID relief, a whole host of things. Nothing has been requested on our behalf by our current representative, and therefore we get nothing. So, which doesn't mean, let's be clear, it doesn't mean that when you ask for things you get it, but if we're never asking, we're never getting it. And I've seen things, I've been to all 6 town meetings this past spring. I see things on the warrant for, backhoes and fire equipment and things that other towns are getting funding for, and we're not. So I think it really is pretty broadly around those issues that, all of our small towns are struggling with budget issues. They're going to get worse, most likely, in light of COVID, and we have to have somebody who is really paying attention to opportunities to fight for funding, and that is the biggest priority, and I'd say that's across education, transportation, environment, a whole host.
Do you think we would need less funding if there was less regulations, state regulations, control certain things in the state that make us education?
Yeah.
If there was less of that?
I think it's not tied to this issue. I mean, we're talking about, again, do you need a backhoe, or do you need a plow, or that's not regulation. Those are just basic needs of our communities. Do you need to plow a road? Do you need to maintain the rip trail? Those are basic needs that we are not requesting funding for.
But what I'm saying is, if we didn't have such large transportation costs cost with the school, I'm just using this as an example.
Yeah.
That would free up money to buy those things. But we're
Oh, yeah, I
bound by
agree.
state regulations to do certain things in certain areas of the town.
To get state money, you have to follow their mandates.
Right.
I think
It seems
unfunded
regulatory.
mandates are a big problem. I mean, I
Yeah.
started off with that. Transportation
Yeah.
is ridiculous. It's
Yeah.
ridiculous. We've been promised things that we haven't received, and
Mhm.
yeah, that's a
I
huge
love
issue.
asking for funds.
It's a huge issue. Yeah.
Should ask for everything.
I'm
Yeah.
just thinking, maybe that's not the whole problem.
I think it's
Money.
a huge problem, honestly.
Yeah.
We're missing. I mean,
Asking.
Yeah.
like places like
Asking.
Wayland got in Ashland
Okay.
are getting $25,000, $75,000 for their schools. Those are wealthy communities, far
Yeah.
wealthier than us, and they're
Mhm.
getting them because somebody actually asked for it.
Mhm.
That's good.
We're missing out.
Yeah, that's
We just really are missing out.
good. Term limits. Do you think that's a good way to go?
That's interesting. That hasn't come up before. So I'm going to give it off the top of my head. So what I'm for sure in favor of is term limits for leadership. Term limits, right? Voters get to choose a little bit whether they're going to keep voting for somebody in their district. But I think in terms of leadership positions, I absolutely would like to see term limits.
There was one more question I've always wanted to ask. Voting your own pay raises. I honestly, I don't
Yeah,
get it,
there you
and I'm
go.
just wondering, I mean,
Yeah.
if I was taking a job and I'm like, yeah, cool, I get to vote my own pay raise. I mean, I don't know how you can change it, but does that make sense to you?
I think it's concerning. What are the committees that people get and the additional stipends that they get for being on those committees is concerning. There are committees who only meet a couple times a year, and people are getting an extra $15,000 for that. That doesn't make sense to me.
No, it doesn't.
15,000? Okay.
Wow.
Yeah.
To meet twice a year.
Wow.
So I would like to see a reduction in in some of those roles. I think the amount of committees we have in the
Which would mean smaller government, a little bit smaller government.
I think that just doesn't that doesn't make sense.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah.
Wow.
I actually don't have any more
Yeah,
questions.
would you like to say make a
Yeah,
statement?
you
or?
can make a statement.
Sure.
Yeah, unless we've missed
yeah.
anything, I don't think so.
We did.
But those are the highlights.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I think what I did maybe fully answer, there's sort of two different ways to go, is back to sort of why I think I'm a good candidate for this
Yeah.
role. So I'd love to talk about that. And
Sure.
again, as I mentioned, I grew up here.
Yeah.
I raised my family here. So I lived in Townsend, raised my family in Dunstable, and my husband and I moved to Groton a few years ago into a smaller house, downsized. My kids
Yeah.
are off and self-sufficient, which is great. And we're committed to staying here. So it's not that being a politician has been on my mind for the last multiple decades. But I think, again, when I walked in 2018, it's really when I started to investigate. And what I have come to learn, I think, over the last couple of years is that I actually think I'm uniquely qualified to do this job. And I would say that from an academic standpoint, from a professional standpoint, and personally. So academically, I have a bachelor's degree in business administration and marketing. I have a master's degree in community social psychology. And I think that's a unique blend, right? So my community social psychology
are you
lens.
psyching us out?
Absolutely not. So it's not
I think you didn't
it's not
say that at
clinical.
first.
It's not clinical. It's community. But it's community, and so it's like, how do you actually get change done with and through other people for the greater good, so that it lasts? And so that to me, that's sort of the orientation that I take. It's in the work that I do. Is how do you actually bring in the people who are living those experiences, who are on the ground, who know better than anybody about what they need. And so that's sort of the one lens that I bring, along with a business lens. Like I'm not about spending money that we're not getting a good return on investment on. Whenever we're spending money, we got to make sure that we're getting a reasonable return. So I really think I also look at not social problems through an economic lens as well, which I think is unique and different. Professionally, again, I've been a small business owner for over 15 years. I started my career in financial services. I started my own firm in 2003 or 4 or something like that. And I work with organizational leaders every day as they start to develop strategic thinking, as they build internal and external relationships, and as they plan for the future. So I'm really up close and personal with folks who are looking at challenges at the private level, at nonprofit level, with for-profit, public corporations. And so again, I'm working with those types of leaders every day. So I think I do have a broad lens on sort of what those challenges are and how to actually work those through. And then I would just say, personally, I grew up in this district, and there were times when there were some challenging circumstances in my family growing up where we needed some support, and sometimes we got it, and sometimes we didn't. And so it's really personal to me that everybody in this district gets the resources they need when they need them. So, sort of upon reflection, I was like, somebody asked me this, and I'm like, actually, I think I've been trained for this, or, building a resume for this my whole life. And I honestly think that we need some different voices in the State House. It's changing. We're starting to see really effective representation from people who have public health backgrounds. There's a surgeon who's in the State House who's terrific. He's done a lot of Facebook Lives, if you've seen them. There are small business owners that are coming into the State House. I think diversity of thought and experience and people who've learned how to solve problems in different ways is only to our mutual benefit. So,
Very good.
That's good.
yeah, thanks.
It was. It went long enough.
Good call.
Okay, Mike.
No, he's giving you the thumbs
That's
up.
a wrap. Debbie Busser.
Thank you very much.
It was nice
Thank
to
you
meet
for
you.
having me.
Yeah,
I
thank
really
you.
appreciate